Think about all the sensitive stuff you send online every single day. Your banking info, your address, maybe even your social security number. We kind of just assume that keeping all that private is a solved problem, right? But what if the very tools we built to protect ourselves are so ridiculously confusing that almost nobody can actually use them? Well, today we're going to dive into a fascinating study that asks a really old question in a very modern way.
Okay, let's make this real for a second. It's tax season. You've got to get your social security number over to your accountant. How do you do it securely? You probably know you shouldn't just pop it into a regular old email. So, what's the move? The funny thing is, a technical solution for this exact problem has been around for decades.
For anyone who knows a thing or two about security, the answer has always been PGP. That stands for Pretty Good Privacy. It's a super powerful encryption standard. But here's the million-dollar question. Can a normal person, someone who isn't a cybersecurity genius, actually use it the right way? Turns out that's a question researchers have been wrestling with for a long, long time.
And believe me, this is not a new problem. Way back in 1999, a huge study called Why Johnny Can't Encrypt basically proved that PGP was impossible for regular folks to use. So they checked again in 2006 and nope, still way too hard. Which brings us to a 2015 study where researchers decided to see if, after all this time and all this new tech, anything had finally changed.
So, these researchers set up a really clever experiment. They wanted to test a modern, supposedly user-friendly PGP tool called Mailvelope, and their goal was super simple: to see if Johnny, our stand-in for the average person, could finally encrypt something.
Now, what's really wild here is that Mailvelope looked perfect on paper. It's a browser extension, so it plugs right into stuff we already use, like Gmail. And get this, it had a 4.6 out of 5-star rating on the Chrome Web Store. You'd look at that and think, finally, this is it, the easy-to-use solution we've all been waiting for. But was it?
The setup for the experiment was about as straightforward as it gets. They got 20 university students, all of whom used Gmail, and paired them up with a friend. They put each person in a separate room, gave them an hour, and told them to complete a task using Mailvelope. Totally standard stuff for a usability test. And what was the task? Well, it was that exact scenario we talked about at the beginning. One friend had to send some sensitive tax info, like a fake social security number, to the other friend using an encrypted email. Simple, right? It's something millions of people might actually need to do for real.
So you've got this highly rated tool, a really clear task, and a full hour to get it done. How do you think it went?
The results were, they were staggering. And absolutely not in a good way. The whole experiment was pretty much a total catastrophe. The numbers are just brutal. Out of the 10 pairs of friends, only just one single pair managed to successfully send and receive an encrypted email in time. That is a 90% failure rate. And here's the real kicker. The only reason that one pair succeeded, it was because one of them had already taken a class that covered public key cryptography. Without that, the success rate would have been 0, a big fat 0.
And this slide just perfectly sums up how bad it was. Based on what the participants said, Mailvelope got what's called a system usability score. It scored a 34.5 out of 100. And as you can see on this chart, that earns it a big, fat F and puts it squarely in the not acceptable zone. So despite that shiny 4.6-star rating online, when real new users tried it, it was a complete disaster.
So the big question is why? Why did everyone fail so spectacularly? What was actually going wrong? Well, the researchers documented this whole catalog of errors, and it really gets to the heart of the confusion. And these weren't just little slip-ups, They showed that people just didn't get how encryption is supposed to work. For instance, 7 pairs encrypted the message using their own public key. That's like locking a box and then keeping the only key yourself. There's no way their friend could ever open it. 3 pairs actually tried to create a key using their friend's name and email. And then, and what has to be the most desperate move, one user just completely gave up and sent his friend his private key and his password, which is the absolute worst thing you can possibly do. It's like mailing someone the keys to your house, your car, and your safe deposit box.
The feedback from the participants really just drives home the pure frustration they felt. I mean, listen to this quote from one person. "Imagine the stupidest software you would ever use, and that was what I was doing." Ouch. That is not exactly a glowing review for a security tool.
And that same person said this: "After 5 minutes, I would have just given up and called." And that right there, that's the heart of it. Security that is unusable is security that gets abandoned. People will always find an easier way, even if it's way less secure. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. The study didn't just point out all the problems. The researchers actually used what they learned to create a blueprint for how to make things better. They came up with 4 concrete, totally doable solutions. So first off, integrated tutorials. Don't make people go hunting for a manual on some other website. Build the guide right into the tool itself. Second, simple explanations. People need a basic idea of how public and private keys work, maybe with a short, easy-to-understand video. Third, automatic invites. So if you try to email someone who doesn't have the software, the tool should just automatically offer to send a friendly email inviting them to get set up. And finally, they said we need to fix the gibberish. You know that giant block of encrypted text? It should come with clear, plain English instructions so the person getting it doesn't just think it's spam or a broken attachment. And all of this leaves us with one final, really critical question. The story of why Johnny can't encrypt proves that technical power means absolutely nothing if people can't actually use it. So think about it this way. If the lock on your front door is so complicated that you can't even figure out how to open it, is your house really safe? It's definitely something to think about the next time you're about to click send.